Welcome to the Mindful Living Podcast. My name is Robilio, and I'm your host. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, personal development author, public speaker, and wellness expert. My intention is to provide education and knowledge that will help you gain new insight and support your journey of healing, recovery, and wellness. If you're wondering how to break old patterns and create a life of wellness in mind, body, and spirit, stay connected. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Before I dive into the topic I want to share about, I want to announce that I'm in the process of changing the title of my podcast from the Mindful Makeover Podcast to the Mindful Living Podcast. If you're connected with me outside of here, you know that Mindful Living is my business, my brand, and more importantly, it's the community I created to empower individuals on their journey of healing, recovery, and working towards a life of optimal wellness in mind, body, and spirit. When I first started this podcast, it was shortly after I published Mindful Makeover 30-Day Workbook and Guide. And to be completely honest, at that time, my vision for this podcast wasn't really clear. All I knew is that I was committed to having insightful conversations related to content or topics within the workbook. And I still plan on doing that. However, I've noticed as I grow and evolve in my own spiritual life, I'm realizing that the work I'm doing in the world is also growing and evolving. So it only makes sense that I would expand this podcast to cover way more than what's in the workbook, because I'm really committed to helping you all create a lifestyle that supports mindfulness and wellness in your mind, body, and spirit. And that goes beyond the workbook. So all that, before I jump into today's topic, which I'm really excited about, I feel really led to talk about boundaries. One, because the year's quickly coming to an end. And as they say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And also the end of the year brings the holidays. And for a lot of people, the holidays can be so triggering and there's a need for boundaries, but most people struggle to have them. And so the point I want to highlight in today's episode is that practicing boundaries is to practice self-love. I'm going to say that again. To practice boundaries is to practice self-love. And I say practice because it's just that. It would be really awesome if there was a way to identify boundaries, make them clear, and then automatically start using them with ease. However, it's not quite that easy. If you've been connected with me for some time, then you've likely have heard me talk about trauma and the different trauma responses and patterns we have learned. And as a result, we end up going into survival mode as a result of our trauma. And because we've been created to survive, most of us have experienced trauma, whether it's directly or indirectly. And in some way, we never had a chance to learn boundaries. Probably because our parents or our primary caregivers, they didn't learn boundaries. And so we were learning from them, and that generational trauma gets passed down. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. And then when you reach this point, we're given the opportunity to really break generational trauma and to really unlearn the things that didn't serve us growing up and certainly aren't serving us now. And so, something that I think is really interesting is that we as humans, we tend to clearly understand the visible boundaries in our life. Like the lines that are on the street that we know we have to stay within, or the red stop sign. We all know what that means, and we respect that boundary for the most part of stopping, and if not, stay away from that person on the road. Or, we all know what a green light means, a yellow light or a red light. And the reason these boundaries are so easy to understand is because we've learned about them since we were little kids, right? We've been conditioned that red means stop, green means go, and yellow means caution or pause. And so that makes it really easy to abide by those boundaries when we see them on the road, for example. No different than, no different than if there's a gate, we all naturally just pause before crossing the gate, if we ever cross or open the gate, right? Why? Because it's a visible boundary that we can see and we know what that means. But when it comes to the unseen and the need to identify and set emotional boundaries, we struggle. And let's be honest with each other. There is nothing easy about telling a loved one no. There is nothing easy about speaking your truth to someone, and it can literally feel like life or death when it comes to having to tell a loved one that they are hurting you or they have hurt you. And it's also difficult at times to cancel plans after committing to them. I think we've all been there. These are just examples of common themes that majority of people struggle with, and I know I certainly did at one point in my life. But it doesn't end here. There is a list of areas that people tend to stay stuck or even suffer, all because they either, one, don't understand what it means to have boundaries, or two, they know their boundaries, but they don't know how to use and apply them. And I think that's a really, really, really big piece, is there are so many people that know their boundaries or know the areas they need to have boundaries, but when it comes to applying them, they don't know how to do that or where to begin. And I know for me, there was a time in my life where I clearly knew what my boundaries were, and I knew the people that I needed to have boundaries around and the areas that I needed to have them around. But when it came time to practicing them, I would literally freeze. My nervous system was not ready to practice them. Whether it was to tell someone no, or to tell someone I don't appreciate the way they are talking to me, or even the times that I was struggling and I needed help. For whatever reason, when it came time to ask for help, I couldn't do it. I would lock up. And in my case, my lack of boundaries was stemming from my learned response of people pleasing. And my people pleasing response was stemmed from an old, very deep fear of mine of abandonment and rejection, and trying to control other people's thoughts and opinions of me, all out of fear. And so you can see how the topic of boundaries, there's so much around this topic, and it's way, 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 way bigger than just learning how to say no, right? It's really gaining self-awareness and understanding where your patterns come from, right? Where does your need to people please come from? Where is your pattern of perfectionism? Where does that come from? Or being an overachiever, where does that come from? Or maybe even the procrastinator, where did that response come from? And so, identifying boundaries is important, and more than just identifying them, again, it's understanding that once you identify where the need for boundaries really comes in for you, it's knowing that it's a process and it will take practice. We are all overcoming years and years and years of conditioning and learned responses. And, I really want us to pause there because, it's so easy to judge ourselves, and it's so easy to get mad at ourselves for being stuck in certain patterns. But the truth is, every single pattern that we have and our behaviors that we've learned and the responses that we've learned, they have kept us safe. At one point in our life, these patterns, these behaviors, these responses, they kept us safe. And so I invite you in this moment to just take a moment to place your hands on your heart and join me in saying, thank you, amazing, brilliant, intelligent body, for keeping me safe. Thank you, amazing, brilliant, intelligent body, for keeping me safe. Because the truth is, if it weren't for our amazing bodies, we would not be here. I would not be recording this episode, and you all would not be listening to this episode had our bodies not done such a brilliant job in keeping us safe. So for that, it's important we honor our body and where we are in our journey. And, as I move on, I want to share with you the problem is that once our survival mode is activated, it doesn't turn off by itself. And this is why the majority of people go through life stuck in their stress response, making it nearly impossible to know how to set boundaries. And it would make sense, right? Because if a person is stuck in trauma, they don't know what their boundaries are, never mind how to set them, because their priority is, I need to stay safe. I have to keep my body feeling safe. And so as long as a person feels like they are in survival, or they are deeming people, places, and things to be a threat to their safety, it's going to be really hard to know what the boundaries need to be or how to set them. And so you can see there's a lot that we can unpack related to this topic. But for the purpose of today, I invite you to take some time and ask yourself the following questions, or maybe even take some time journaling them. I will put these questions in the show notes so you have them for your reference later. But question number 1, What areas would you benefit from having boundaries? Is it in the relationships with family members, with your significant others? Is it with your friends or peers? Is it in the workplace? Or is it in the relationship with yourself? Question 2, what's keeping you from feeling safe to practice your boundaries? Question 3, what can you do now to help you begin the process of learning how to practice boundaries? What is within your power right now that will help you begin the process of learning how to practice your boundaries? I really encourage you guys to spend some time journaling and answering these questions, because again, in order for us to be able to get to the point in our journey of having boundaries, we first have to be aware, right? We have to become self-aware, and we have to know that it's safe to set boundaries. We have to help our body know that we can move out of survival mode into a place of being, right? Into a place of being, because as long as we can get into a place of being, in time, eventually, that will lead us to thriving. But you can't go from survival to thriving, right? There has to be that middle of learning how to just be. And in that space of being, the more committed and consistent you stay of being self-aware and getting into the practice of applying the skills and the knowledge that you're learning, that will eventually guide you into a place of thriving. And so, it's only human nature of us to self-protect. I think every single human being would agree that when we feel threatened in some way, we go into defense mode, right? We fall into old patterns because we want to protect ourselves, and it makes sense that we want to protect ourselves. But what happens is everything that used to help keep us safe, such as people-pleasing or perfectionism, just as 2 examples, eventually can harm us. And you might be wondering why, right? What do you mean perfectionism or people-pleasing can harm us? Well, let's use the example of people-pleasing. If you grew up in a home where you witnessed a parent being the people pleaser, then it only makes sense that you became the people pleaser. But beyond that, let's say you grew up in a home where you learned if you go against what your parents say, you're going to get grounded. Or if you went against what they said, you were going to get, physically hit. Or if you spoke your truth or shared your feelings, they yelled or created conflict. And maybe you grew up in that home where you learned, it's safer just to walk on eggshells and keep the peace and please everybody, because then there's no screaming or yelling. So looking at the conditioned learned behavior of being a people pleaser within that context, as growing up in a home as I just described, it makes sense that being a people pleaser kept you safe, right? Because as long as everybody was happy, there was no yelling, and then you could feel safe. Makes perfect sense. But now take that same response, a people pleaser, into you as an adult, right? If you continue to put every person before yourself, this could cause you to continue to neglect your own needs, which inevitably could prevent you from healing, from recovering, and prevent you from evolving into a better version of you. And so that's why I say learned responses, they once help us, but then they can actually harm us. And so, another important thing that I want to really highlight to you guys is, in order for us to get into the practice of setting boundaries, we have to know that it's safe to do that. And so we have to start somewhere, right? If you've gone your whole adult life, or maybe even your life from childhood through adolescent into adulthood, not feeling safe, then it does not make sense that all of a sudden you're going to feel safe, right? You're not going to be able to just dive into having boundaries and start using them in every area of your life. But what you can do is find one small area that you can start using boundaries. Perhaps it's start by just saying no. That's it. Just start saying no. Or maybe you can ask for help in an area that you need help. Or maybe you'll even tell your significant other, I need 30 minutes this weekend just for me, quiet time, whether to go on a walk, go to the beach, read a book. But find some area where you can begin by setting a small boundary. And then the most important piece is, once you find that area, set the boundary, right? Say no, ask for help, ask for some me time. And then the most important piece is give yourself permission to sit in the discomfort and maybe even the guilt that will surface for you, including the thoughts that are going to be telling you you're selfish for saying no, you're selfish for asking for help, or you're weak for asking for help, or it's selfish that you're asking for me time. Because I promise you, the discomfort is going to rise, the guilt is going to surface, and your thoughts are going to be telling you that you're selfish and everything else to cause you to not hold the boundary. For no other reason other than if you've gone your entire life not practicing boundaries, it's going to be like learning a new language. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be difficult. You're going to want to say, screw this. What's the point? This is too hard. But this is a pivotal moment in your healing, in your recovery, in your evolution. Your ability to sit through the discomfort, feel it, honor it, process it, do your best to make sense of it, and then let it flow through you and out of you. Do not let yourself fall into the old ways of giving up on your boundaries, right? Because if you do that, again, just as I said earlier, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So let this be an opportunity for you to begin learning how to practice boundaries. And I'll tell you guys, I've been on my healing journey for a decade, and boundaries are still the absolute hardest thing for me to do. I can't tell you how many times I fall into old patterns simply because they are familiar and they feel safe, but it doesn't serve me at all, and it doesn't serve you anymore. And that's the part that you really have to understand, is that your body is going to feel like you have to stay in that old pattern of the people pleaser because it feels safe, but in the long run, it is not serving you. It's only blocking you from being able to heal, recover, and move forward in your life. And so, I want you guys to really practice getting into that place of knowing you can set your boundaries, and it's safe to use boundaries. Even if you tell someone no or decline an invite or express your feelings, you are safe, right? That old child part of us is not going to feel safe, but we have to tap into our higher self. We have to tap into our consciousness and tell ourselves, no, I am safe now. It is safe to say no. It is safe for me to tell that person they hurt my feelings. It is safe to say no to this invitation. And it's knowing that you have to connect to your body, right? When we don't feel safe, it's because our body's not feeling safe. So no matter what you feel, it's going to feel big and scary, but no matter how big and scary it feels, know that your feelings will pass, right? It's energy and motion. Let your feelings pass through you. And I give you my word, the more consistent and committed you stay with sticking to your boundaries, in time, this practice will get easier and easier and easier. And eventually it will become automatic. Just like you've probably noticed, it's only automatic of you to be a people pleaser, or it's only automatic of you to strive for perfectionism, or it's automatic of you to procrastinate, or it's automatic of you to say yes to every single thing that you're asked, or it's automatic of you to participate in every dramatic conversation you're invited to. That's because you've learned those responses. So if you can stay consistent and committed to learning healthier boundaries in time, it will become automatic to say no. It will become more automatic to pause before responding. It will become more automatic to no longer be the people pleaser, right? You'll be more committed to putting yourself first. In time, it'll become more automatic to have more grace for yourself and to give yourself some space to mess up and make mistakes and not constantly strive for this false illusion of perfectionism. And it'll become more automatic of you to actually not participate in every dramatic conversation you're invited to. I love saying that because that's something that I've learned recently. Just because a person invites you to their drama doesn't mean you have to attend. You don't have to show up for it. You can sit there and listen, but you don't have to participate. And I think that's why boundaries are a superpower. Having boundaries are a superpower. So again, with consistency and staying committed, all of this will get easier. That's really important to know. You did not end up how you are overnight, so you're not going to be able to master this overnight. But the point is, start, because if you don't start, it's not going to change by itself. And you all are more than worthy of healing, of recovering, and creating new patterns and new habits that will actually help you move forward in your life, that will help you protect your inner peace and help you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in your life, whether it's a goal, a dream, or desire, right? The people that I have found, whether they're people in my life that I know personally and I look up to, or the people that I follow, these spiritual workers, one thing that seems to be quite consistent across the board is that they have clear boundaries and they're confident in their boundaries, right? The people who are waking up feeling good and able to truly live their dream life and create the life they want, those are the people who they know their boundaries. They stay away from the people who aren't serving them. They stay away from places that don't serve them. They are making choices that are aligned with their highest and best self. And the only way we can accomplish that is by telling ourselves we are safe, really practicing feeling safe in our body daily, right? It's more than just saying I'm safe. It's actually helping your body know you are safe, and then identifying what has to change in your life so that you can actually break free of those old learned responses and patterns and move forward in your life, whatever that looks like. It's going to look different for most of us, but also the same, because at the end of the day, we are all more alike than we are different. So I want you guys to know I love you all so very much. You are more than worthy of healing and recovery. I cannot say that enough. You are worthy of healing. You are worthy of recovering. You are worthy of creating new patterns and new habits, ones that will actually support you in your life. And I want you to remember, to practice boundaries is to practice self-love. So say it with me. I am confident in my ability to practice my boundaries. It's safe to have boundaries. It's time to have boundaries. And because I love myself, I will use my boundaries. Thank you for joining me today. If you found today's episode to be insightful and inspiring, subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. And I kindly ask that you please leave me a review so together we can help the next person. To learn more about my products and services, check out www.themindfulliving.com and come connect with me on Instagram at mindfulliving.now, where I share daily inspiration, mindful skills, tips, and more. Until the next episode, stay mindful and always remember the power that lives inside of you.